Oh my gosh, there's a little red light that says
Hey,
live.
we're live.
And Tim, you would be really impressed. There are 122 people waiting to watch us today, all because of you, Tim Henry.
122. Wow.
122, 122. Angie's going to be really angry because it's never that many when it's Angie and I doing data security over coffee. Okay, so Harford.
119 of those are just different Chrome tabs I have open of this.
So, got a really big announcement coming up today, but before I get started, I just wanted to thank Tim Henry for the work that he's done in being able to reach out to our very good friend Guido at South Hills. When we were in the green room, because we have a green room, we were just talking about, the importance of realizing that there are really great students that are in schools like South Hills. And I think often, we have this bias that, oh my gosh, if you don't go to a Big Ten school, or you don't go to a, this kind of school or that kind of school, how could you possibly, recruit students from South Hills? Well, I can tell you that you can, you should, and we have, and we've had really great experiences. I wanted to give Guido an opportunity just to talk a little bit about South Hills and what he does. We also have a super surprise for him that's appropriate since we're coming up on Christmas, right? But I guess before I get started with you, Guido, Tim, I wanted to ask you, so we've known each other for a very, very, very long time. In fact, I met Tim Henry through my kids playing upwards bound basketball. And a wily little creature on the basketball court was Tim Henry. So, Tim, why, out of all the things that you could possibly do, why get an education and spend the kind of money that you have spent on an education in cybersecurity? Like, why is that important to you?
So one of the things that I believe in is the principle of being a lifelong learner and being a forever student. I'm always looking to learn new things. And in cybersecurity, you kind of have to have that mindset. And not only that, I believe in investing in yourself professionally, investing in yourself personally, because I think there's more than just a credential that you earn when you get an education or when you complete a degree. And I think it's a benefit of, with whom you're working too, or for whom you're working. I think that an education isn't the be all end all of being successful, but I think it's a piece to the puzzle of being successful in, a large puzzle of various things.
You know what, Guido? I got to tell you, I didn't give that to him to read. He did that on his own. He did a really nice job. So, how did you guys meet? Because this is the first time that we're interacting, but I know that you guys met outside of this. So, how did the two of you meet?
Sure. I mean, we probably met at at an ISC squared local meetup.
Okay.
So I've always tried to stay connected to the cybersecurity community, especially since we brought a little bit more cybersecurity into our program. But I was probably at the first ISC squared Penn Highlands meetup back in the day when it was started up. So I've been always around there, and then Tim kind of jumped on board more recently, I think. And we just kind of got to talking, and that's what's fun about just being in a small area, but then finding even a smaller network of cybersecurity focused folks and just talking and learning what everyone's doing in the space.
Right. So what do you do at South Hills, Guido?
Well, I've taught there. This is my 20th year teaching.
20th year. You started working there when you were like 15 years old.
Well, something like that. And out of my first job, I worked. I'm mostly a trained software engineer, and I worked in software engineering for a while. Did electronic health records in another local company, and it was awesome. And then it just kind of a random thing happened, and I found myself in the classroom. And really, since I started, it was all about. I mean, I really loved what South Hills provided. I mean, they've been there since 1970, trying to get students ready for some type of career that exists in our area. So I essentially teach classes. We have other, I obviously teach in IT and software development, but we have classes in medical. We just started a graphic arts program in Altoona, and we have classes in business, so I run like kind of the tech shop in Altoona, and I
Okay.
just have fun learning what businesses are doing and showing that off in a class. I try to embrace like the whole community service mindset as well.
Mhm.
That's another big South Hills thing that we do. And if I can get close to the business community and I can get my students close to the business community and bring in what the business community is doing in IT, like even just this last week, I was trying to think about like how could I explain what we do at South Hills? Like just this last week before our break here, I was doing Angular and TypeScript with the programmers.
Whoa.
My web server admins were hosting websites like every single which way you can do that in 2024. My hardware class was testing servers that we got from donation from I guess it was a data center tear out from Sheets. So
Okay.
they, and then what we did is we kind of set those up, and then they gave me a bunch. So I didn't need a bunch. So then I figured, how could I pass this on even to more people? So I donated 4 of those servers to GACTC, and they have an IT program. I was doing basics of I have a Linux class. I don't think there's a lot of Linux being taught a lot. We have multiple classes in that. And then, I just put stuff out in front of the students and I let them play with it, and don't be afraid if you break it, because
Right.
sometimes you have to break it in order to learn from it. So I had first year students even setting up some server clusters, and yeah, so I don't know. I love it down there. It's like a maker space. It's kind of
Right. Yeah.
just I go talk to everybody, find out what everyone's doing, and try to bring that into the classroom in a fun way.
Mhm.
So
Are you familiar with a guy by the name of Rob Gutschall?
I do know Rob. Yeah.
Rob is a good friend of Reclamere, a
Mhm.
client of ours, and it's interesting because I think the two of you have a very similar perspective on IT.
Mhm.
There is this. I think there's this old traditional view of, oh my gosh, they're the people that we put in a closet or we hide them in the basement, and they can't possibly come out after lunchtime, and they
Yeah,
don't have
that's
to
right.
talk to anybody. Um, and now we have IT people that are super cool, like Rob and Tim and yourself, and you're like a force to be reckoned with, right? So I think when we talk about cyber, and you look at things from a very different perspective. Like you said, don't be afraid to break it. Like you have to learn.
Mhm.
And I think that that's one of the things, and I don't know, Tim, if you would agree or not, but I think that's one of the things that's really important about programs is what's the practical approach? What's the hands-on nature? What do you really get to do? Because I think that to say that you're going to learn all of this stuff in a book and then you're going to go be a great cyber warrior without any kind of hands-on experience, and really being in the trenches, I think is really that's mistaken. You got to get into it. We were
Mhm.
fortunate. Tim
Mhm.
came on board a number of years ago, and worked as a warehouse technician at Reclamere, and really kind of came up through the ranks, proved himself. And I'm not saying that because he's here, but he did it. He was a really good worker, kind of a goofball because he was a kid, for goodness sake. But he's also kind of like mature beyond his years.
Mhm.
Um, and now what's fascinating is to watch him interact with clients and solve problems because he had that hands-on experience. Um, so Guido, I guess my question for you is: so we've got people that are out there today saying, "Oh my gosh, what should I be doing?" And what's the
Mhm.
path that I should take, et cetera, and so forth. And I guess what I would be curious to find out from you is what kind of advice would you give somebody that's really trying to figure out the pathway that they want to follow for their career? Like what's
Sure.
that advice?
Well, I'll go back to the basketball analogy just first, just because Tim's here too. And like the fact that you said he was like a gritty basketball
Oh
player
my gosh, he was the
on
scrappiest kid that I ever
I
watched play
I
basketball. He was a
I
lunatic.
I tell my students that all the time. I said, I was like, I'm sure you've went to like a junior high or a high school basketball game, and you can tell the ones that want to get the ball and just go for it, right? And take the shot. And, you have to be in the game, cybersecurity itself is kind of a tricky thing. I mean, you have to know a little bit of everything to kind of properly secure infrastructure. So you just need to have a mindset that you're going to learn this, and there are so many different things you have to learn. So then I go back to another story, and it's like, hey, if I wanted to be a truck driver, I can't figure that out on my own. Like I don't know anyone that has an 18-wheeler that I can go in and just start figuring out how to drive the thing around. However, if I want to be a computer technician, and whatever that is, if that is software development, if that is IT, if that is cybersecurity, and that's hard too. Like, how many different parts? I mean, how many different types of careers are there in technology? But if you want to be one of them, maybe a web designer. Most everyone now has a machine in front of them, a laptop, a cell phone, and YouTube. There's nothing that I teach special at South Hills that isn't already out there, that we could just start learning from. There's a YouTube channel, or there's, Chat GPT to say, hey, what should I be learning first? And I just tell everyone, sometimes you need a curated path. Here's a curriculum. Start with this because that's the building blocks. But at the same time, I taught myself so many things over the years. I still do. Like, Tim started with, lifelong learning, and how do you become a learner of things, and how do you consume all this information, figure out what's good and what's a waste of time at that point in time. But yeah, like it's in front of you. Like, don't wait for your teachers. Don't wait for me to get to some concept. And that's why I'm some of my first year students, even, I'm so proud of, because they don't want to wait until the second year class where they build a hyper converged, server cluster. Mm-hmm. They were doing that in like this 6th week of school, so you just put stuff in front of them and on YouTube, and with a computer in front of you, you just start trying things and you start talking to people. And like you said, even Joe, like the fact that we're okay getting out there in the community and talking to people. Most people in tech, most people in any career want to share their advice of how to get in there, and just don't be afraid to go find someone that that somehow, even if it's just being adjacent to technology, just talk to them and ask for their advice and go for it. So those are some of the big things I always talk about to my students.
It's interesting that you talk about going out there and just trying it, and, not worried about it, and, don't worry about the curriculum or the timing. And Tim, I don't know if you would agree from your own experience and what you see in the job that you do at Reclamere. But that's what the proverbial bad guys are doing. The proverbial bad guys aren't waiting to say, hey, I'm going to wait for somebody else to develop XYZ script. Mm-hmm. They're not waiting for somebody else to say, hey, I've got this way in. They're every single day, they are not waiting for anything other than an opportunity to steal information and make money, because that's what this is all about, right? This is not about, hey, I'm going to change your grades in high school and back in the day, or, I'm going to put up nudie pictures of my math teacher or whatever. No, this is about, hey, I got to make a lot of cash. And so my point is that I think in order for you to be if you want to use the term cyber warrior or what have you have to be that person who's willing to get out front, and you're willing to charge ahead. Tim, I don't know if you had those experiences on your own. I would imagine that, being inside Reclamere is not the only place where you learn. I don't know how that affects your job, how you view things.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things where somebody's going to be first, and the attackers or the bad guys, like you said, they're just waiting for an opportunity. They're not worrying about the rules and the regulations and playing fair and making sure everybody's on the same page. No, they're doing it by any means necessary. So on the other side of that, the good guys, the blue team, we have to be on that same level. We've got to be on that same mentality where, how can the attacker do what they want to do by any means necessary? So how can we defend by any means necessary, rather than, waiting around for somebody to tell them to do it, or waiting around for, what's the right time. Sometimes you do just have to take a risk and just do things.
Mm-hmm. So we started in, I guess it was October. It was Cybersecurity Awareness Month, right? And my business partner, Angie, challenged me to come up with some kind of wackadoodle way of kind of promoting cybersecurity. So long story short, we came up with these really crazy questions. And I said to people, hey, listen, if you can answer the question, you reach out to me on LinkedIn, we're going to give you $100 card, whatever, and we continued to go, and nobody was answering questions correctly until a really good friend of mine, Ferlin Patrick, he's also known as Fuzz. I've known him for years. Really great guy up in north of Williamsport. I should know where you live, Fuzz, but I can't remember. But I know that I'm going to hear about it once this thing gets out of LinkedIn, and that's okay. But anyway, so he comes up with the answer. And at that point in time, I think we had gotten up to Tim like $400 in Visa gift cards. And, so we did a big announcement, and Fuzz said to me, he goes, I don't want to take the gift cards. I want you to donate them. I want you to do something really good. I don't need your $400. And I was like, that's really cool, because he also is a believer in lifelong learning, has been volunteering his time with a program called Pennsylvania Free Enterprise Week for decades. Probably one of the goofiest guys you'll ever meet. But, when you start talking about a student that's trying to figure out what is his or her pathway, he has a really genuine way of sitting down and talking with a student. It's a little bit edgy, I'll be honest with you.
I was a counselor at PFVW for.
Get out of here! What week? What week? Week 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Week 3.
That's not a good week. Week 3 is not a good. That's where they put all the scabs. All the scabs go to week 3. No, sorry. Week 2 is the only true week.
I see. Yeah, I remember that competition too, Joe.
And by the way, I hear that you were. Does that mean that I could possibly recruit you to be again?
Oh, it's possible. Yeah.
Possible? Excellent. Yeah. Tim, make note of this, since we don't have fireflies on, that we will search down Guido and get him to be a volunteer. So anyway, so I go back to Tim and I'm like, Tim, we got to figure out what to do with this money. And Tim has been involved with our local chapter, the Penn Highlands chapter of ISC2 now. He is your position there, Tim?
I'm the treasurer.
Treasurer means he holds the purse strings. Pretty powerful position. And we're thinking about it. We're like, you know what? Let's find a school that has a student cyber club, whatever it may be. And he's like, you know what? I think let's reach out to South Hills. Let's find out what they're doing. I'm like, okay. I mean, he's a lot closer to it than I am. And so we came across South Hills and Guido. And so tell me a little bit about your club, and then we're going to unveil the surprise.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. I mean, the last few years, like it kind of started out, we have a tech club, an IT club. We brought some more cybersecurity classes into our mix over the last year or so, like digital forensics and cryptography and intro to cybersecurity and ethical hacking. So we kind of brought all that stuff together, and we're always continuing to do community service. So like, this last one I thought was so cool, like Admiral Perry area Votech. They have a cybersecurity program and like a multimedia program too. And, they wanted like ideas, like what else should they put in their program? So my students and I, as part of this club, we got some funding from them for them to buy some cybersecurity gear. But my students and I are building out like labs for them, so they can have like, a hardware security key. But how do they use that? They can have an encrypted flash drive. I bought them a little firewall, but my students are going to figure out how best to present what a firewall is and what it does, for a high school student. So we got benefit by just getting some more stuff to play with, which was exciting.
Sure.
But we're going to pass that along. What else? Like I said, the donations from Sheets were awesome. Just having some hardware rather than go to e-recycling, right? Let's get a couple more years out of it.
Sure.
And then kind of pass that along, and do that. We've been doing things with just nonprofits in the area. We had some laptops donated last year. We retooled them rather than trash them, and then donated them to nonprofits. We've set up websites and kind of done website design, which is just really neat. And then I guess back to cybersecurity, we've developed with, just like my students and I, capture the flag events. We're kind of obsessed with CT, or maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I have a couple students that also we play. So we've done partnerships with Major League Hacking, which is more of a software development kind of thing.
Right.
But we've put on capture the flag events. My students have developed flags. We're taking this thing traveling now. So we're gonna be presenting it at B-Sides Flood City. We're
Nice.
gonna be presenting it at Hack PSU, for all the Penn State, all the people that go to the Hack PSU event. So yeah, I just everything that I can think of to make, give my students an opportunity to either get out there in the community,
right,
or learn some tech, or be closer to cybersecurity. That's what we do. So I utilize that time outside of the classroom in our club time to do interesting things like that. So
well, I think it's cool because there's a number of things. Again, historically, technologists haven't necessarily been, the greatest public speakers, or they're not necessarily brought to the table to be key decision makers or real stakeholders within the organization. I know Sheets is not that way. Sheets is really, I think, leaps and bounds ahead of doing that kind of work. We work with another partner company, Barry Solutions Group in Altoona.
Oh, yeah.
They do a lot of great work with Sheets. And so I think that partnership that you have is really powerful. I think the other thing that's kind of cool is being able to build a relationship with a school like Admiral Perry and others within the Career and Technology Center space really also creates that pathway up through South Hills. So we can take that high school student, that male or female, bring them through the high school system, get them, matriculated into South Hills. So they're formalizing their education, and then obviously moving them forward out into the workplace and internships. I think what you're doing is really, it's cool and it's fun because a club is supposed to be that way, especially from a community service perspective, right?
Sure.
But then from the academic business side, I think it's really cool as well.
And I'll tell you the other thing too. We last year we had a Hack the Cloud event. And my students helped run the whole thing. These Major League Hacking events, they have this thing called Global Hack Week. And it's mostly just to present technology to students that would have not seen it, or just, get them hooked up to people that have worked in the field for 20 years. And it's all online, but I'll run events out of Altoona at our school. I had almost 100 students last year from Bedford County, from Blair County, it was just really cool. They were just all in our room. I was having them, talk about how DOD would secure something. We had, classes on just putting a website in the cloud. And my students I ran a few classes, but my students ran most of the other classes. So those are the type of things. And, I guess we're also the last project I feel like they've really run with is, these 3D printers that are everywhere. And it's somewhat adjacent to what we do. It's not exactly, IT, it's not exactly cybersecurity, but I got them a 3D printer a while back. And it sat and we printed some things, and hey, yeah, that's fun. And then you kind of get bored. I just had this last group. And one of our other teachers in medical at South Hills had an idea. She says, I know there are these schools around Altoona, for kids with autism or on the spectrum or any type of special needs. And they love these fidget toys, So my students, I don't really even know how to print on this thing. I just said, take this, figure it out. and they're downloading models, they're creating models, they're printing, and we donated these things to, I don't know if you know Soaring Heights in Altoona, but there's a
Yes.
couple schools. So we're gonna partner with them. And it's just so cool that they can just, first of all, figure out how something works, which is what we do every day. You know, maybe it's a security problem. Well, we need to know how it works before we can actually help protect it. So figure out how the 3D printer works. There's this entrepreneurial thing too, like with business. Like it's like how much do we have to charge for them? You know, like how do we do that? And it's just so awesome giving them stuff, you know, having the opportunity to give them things, and what comes out of that. You know, I try, if I talk too much, I'm doing something wrong. You know, that's how I think about it. I can't just be lecturing all day. So,
well, I think that we all accept the fact that everybody learns differently. We know that cyber is a high touch, full frontal space. It is not for the weak-hearted. And when you get people to get involved in hands-on activities, using the entrepreneurial mindset, having community service involved, creating value for other people, those are all huge positives in the way in which people like to learn and contribute. The one thing I would say, Guido, is if you ever think it would be helpful to bring your students into Reclamere for a tour to talk about the business and all of the things that we do, we'd be happy to host you. If you think it would ever be beneficial, this is where Tim's going to squirm around a little bit, but he's a big boy, he'll figure it out. If you ever think it would be really good to have somebody like Tim Henry come into the classroom and talk about, you know, how did I start and what was my journey and what did it look like? By all means, I'm sure he would enjoy doing that, because I think that's part of Reclamere's community service, is being able to give back. You know, and any way in which you think we could collaborate together in order to create more value for your students, we're happy to do that. All you have to do is just simply reach out to Tim and we can have that conversation. So without further ado, Tim Henry, are you ready?
I guess so. Let's find out.
Here comes the drum roll.
Guys, yes.
Probably can't hear this, but that's okay.
No, I can hear it. It's good.
So we were originally going to make a gift to your students' club in the amount of $500, because that was the total amount of money that we had accumulated during October Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But because my business partner, Angie Keating, lets me do whatever I want to do, which is always dangerous, and because we're getting ready to come up on a super duper holiday, Reclamere is going to be donating $1,000 to your student club.
Wow.
And I think it's something that more private sector organizations should be doing. I think you got to get the word out. Hopefully this will help with that, so that, you know,
For sure.
whether those donations are in-kind contributions or equipment or cash or people's time, whatever it may be, I think just being able to pull more of those resources into the classroom is always a really good thing. So we will work out all of the finance blah blah stuff after the new year. Tim and I will probably be into your facility. We'd like to meet students, present one of those big jumbo checks. I have no idea where they print these crazy things, but we'll get that done. And so I just wanted to again say thank you for your time today, and your willingness to be with Tim and I doing this crazy thing called LinkedIn Live. So one last thing, Tim Henry. What advice, now that I've watched you go from basketball court to cyber warrior, what advice do you have for students in the cyber security world?
Well, going back to the basketball court, always work on your free throws. No, I'm just kidding. No, honestly, the biggest advice I can give to students, especially at the ground floor, like just trying to get into the workforce, it is really difficult to get into cybersecurity with zero experience in today's world, but it's doable. And I think the best way to do that is to build your connection list. It's not always about what you know, but it can be about who you know. So when you're in college, when you're at South Hills or any academic institution, don't just pass classes and don't, just get through. Go to all the extracurricular events, go to networking events. I'm going to throw a shameless plug at my ISC Squared chapter because I'm an officer. But if you're in the area, attend ISC Squared events, or any area. There's a local chapter that you can attend. You never know who you're going to meet at those events. And, you could wind up talking to the person who's going to hire you.
For sure.
And I think that also just keep adding value to yourself, keep finishing through schoolwork. Certifications are a really big thing. Again, certification and education, it's a piece of the puzzle. Obviously experience is the best, but in order to get experience, you really have to grind and you really have to hustle to meet people and to, just to put yourself out there. Another thing that I would really recommend students to do with no experience or even with some experience is to make a portfolio of all of the things you do on your own personal time. You have a home lab, great. Document it in a portfolio and explain what kind of things you do in your home lab. What kind of cybersecurity practices are you doing on your own time? That's something that if you're in an interview, you can hand to the interviewer and, show them, this is what I do. This is the initiative that I take. And here are some of the skills that, you can see that I can bring value to your team. And going back to the basketball analogy that Guido used, you just have to keep shooting, just keep trying. You just have to keep being gritty because it really is tough, but it's rewarding. And yeah, that's the advice that I would give to students looking to enter into the workforce of security.
Cyber is a full contact sport,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not for the weak-hearted. And we know just in the work that we do with ISC Squared, the chapter, what we know through InfraGard, and what we know through all of the different organizations that we follow news feeds from. 2025 is only going to spin itself up. It will only become more complicated. It is only the frequency will only increase, the complexity, etc. Bad guys aren't going away. In fact, they're increasing in number. And so, you have got to say to yourself, if you like technology, then sit down and at least have a conversation with somebody like Guido at South Hills, and think about cyber, think about technology, because it will never go away. Is AI going to replace all of the workers? I'm the old guy on the call saying, no, it's not. But if you're not aware of AI, and you don't understand the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI, you're going to get passed by. So, three things. Number one, Guido, thank you for taking the time and for also what we would consider you to be a friend of Reclamere. Number two, I appreciate the fact that you bring a sense of energy and enthusiasm into the classroom, because we know that sometimes secondary education, higher education can be kind of dry or boring, and sometimes technology can, but it sounds to me like it ain't that way at South Hills, and I think that's cool. So I appreciate that about you. And number three, I hope that you and your family have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too, everybody. And I thank you so much for this. I promise I will put all of that to good use, and my students will learn something, and we will throw it out there and make more good out of it.
I'm sure, because Guido, we know where you work and we can find you.
That's right.
I know a guy.
I am not the guy.
We will be in touch after the new year. And
Awesome.
Tim, thanks so much for putting this together. You guys take care and have a great holiday.
Yeah, Merry
Thank you,
Christmas,
Guido.
everybody.
I appreciate it.
See you all later.
Thanks, Dr. Harford.
Thanks. Bye-bye.